What's up, Summoners? My name is Tia, and today we have our high elo tier list specifically discussing picks for Emerald and higher. Due to certain champs being stronger in specific elo brackets, we've decided to split the tier list to provide more precise rankings and analysis of champion picks. But before we begin, we got our question of the day. What's the worst thing someone has told you in Wild Rift? The game can get quite toxic at times, and not having anywhere to share such experiences can become a mental burden. So share your thoughts and experiences down in the comments below, and let's all lift each other up a bit. Now, let's get into the video. To begin the list off, we have the Baron lane. In our other video, Yasuo was placed in the B tier for the Baron lane, while he's placed in the A tier for this tier list. Now, why did we place Yasuo in A tier this time around? In higher elo, team composition plays a heavier hand in deciding the tides of a game. Thanks to Yasuo's ultimate, his kit excels at extending the crowd control effects of his teammates. He teleports to a knocked up champion, keeping them in the air and dealing extra damage. When discussing his kit, we can't forget about his wind wall. A lot of times, in the lower elos, Yasuo's will haphazardly throw out this skill, effectively blocking nothing. In higher elos, most Yasuos know how to use this skill to maximize its efficiency. When properly used, the skill can block game-changing abilities, such as Seraphine's ultimate. Windwall can also completely counter an ADC's damage in a teamfight. Of course, even in the high elo, Yasuos feed when being overzealous with their plays. That's why he's in the A tier, and not the S. Next up, we have Darius. He plays very well in the low elo, having been placed in the S tier for that list. But in this list, he sits at the C tier picks. Darius has clear strengths, but also very clear weaknesses. For more experienced players, they typically know how to work around him, kite and avoid his hook, and you'll manage to avoid the bulk of his damage. Without the proper lead, Darius can't heal as much as necessary to survive long enough in fights to stack his passive. This means that he can't slam dunk as effectively and therefore can't charge in, guns blazing. Frankly, if a Darius can't run in and mess the enemy team up, he's pretty useless. The pick is fantastic when playing from ahead, but that's the thing. You have to be ahead, and most high elo players won't give him the opportunity to gain a lead, making the pick less than optimal. Fiora, the Grand Duelist, is a very powerful pick in high elo. As a very mechanical champion, her kit has a parry that effectively counters every crowd control effect in the game. But the key aspect of this skill is timing. As it has a pretty high cooldown, if whiffed, Fiora will find herself in a very vulnerable position. Understanding when and how to use parry is essential to maximizing the pick. She has a low cooldown dash and auto-attack resetting skills that require pinpoint precision. These allow for players that understand her combos to deal fantastic damage and chase down the enemy team. Additionally, her passive and ultimate provide plenty of resources to keep her alive. Fiora truly is one of the most versatile champions in the game, capable of showing the true skill of a player. We placed her in the S tier for this list. Here's the full tier list for Baron lane. Before we continue, be sure to check out our ProGuides Wild Rift Discord. Be part of our community and talk Wild Rift with our hosts, share memes, and tell me hi, because I'm Tia. Meow. Now it's time to talk about jungle. In high elo, Lee Sin is, without a doubt, overpowered. He's one of those junglers where if you really know what you're doing, you absolutely destroy and take over the map. He is hands down the strongest early game jungler in Wild Rift. Thanks to his second proc of each of his base skills, Lee Sin essentially has 6 active abilities at level 3. Spacing these abilities out allows Lee Sin to fully capitalize on his passive, which grants him faster attack speed after each spell usage. This provides massive utility for the early game, allowing him to skirmish very well and clear jungle camps with ease. To make him even stronger, he has 2 dashes built into his kit, making his ganks very hard to outmaneuver. His ultimate ability, Dragon's Rage, kicks an enemy champion and knocks up everyone the target runs into. Comboed with his dashes, his ultimate is incredibly scary to deal with. On the opposite end of the spectrum, Amumu is on the D tier for this list. His early game is incredibly weak, and his engage is very avoidable with the proper ward coverage. Map pressure is everything for junglers, and with the lack of duel potential to properly contest objectives in the early game, the enemy junglers can easily overtake the map. He may play well in the lower elo, but against junglers who know the matchup, he'll be abused throughout the game. Yeah, he's great for team fights thanks to his area of effect ultimate that potentially stuns the entire enemy team, but in high elo, he won't be given the chance to scale into this stage of the game. Why play a Mumu when you can just play Wukong? As an AD champion, the Monkey King's kit has very consistent damage output. If his skills are on cooldown, he can just auto-attack. In addition, he has an area of effect knockup ultimate that can be casted twice. This makes him a team-fighting monster, capable of decimating enemy squishies alongside giving his team ample opportunity to follow up his engages. Not only that, but he also has great dueling potential thanks to the utility provided by his second skill, Decoy. Using this skill creates a clone alongside granting Wukong temporary invisibility. This lets him sneak around to either escape or take enemies off guard. The clone itself also provides extra damage. These variables put together make Wukong an S-tier pick in our jungle list. Here are the jungle picks laid out for you. Before we move on to the mid lane, be sure to check out our mid lane guide. This video will help you master the role, allowing you to make the most of the picks we'll mention next. The first pick for the mid lane we'll discuss is Aurelion Sol. We mentioned him in our other tier list and actually placed him on the B tier. On the other hand, for this list, we have him placed in the S tier. Aurelion Sol was recently nerfed, butchering his early game damage. But his late game is still very strong and his roaming mechanics were not changed whatsoever. He can still pass through terrain while amassing a gigantic cluster of stars. For players who have a firm understanding of roaming mechanics, this should be more than enough for players to abuse. His damage may have been nerfed, but for those who know how to position their stun on Aurelion Sol, that by itself should be enough to change the tides of the game. In addition, his late game numbers were actually increased a slight amount. This means that in later stages of the game, he'll actually provide more damage, making him incredibly hard to deal with. Next up, we have Twisted Fate in the A tier. Similar to Aurelion Sol, Twisted Fate is excellent at roaming. His ultimate provides him a near-global teleport, allowing him to position aggressively and acquire map pressure. The power to globally impact a game is very beneficial to snowballing. A properly timed roam can completely destroy the enemy side laner's chances of scaling. Picking a spot to teleport requires strong game knowledge, therefore making him a better pick in higher ELOs. Be warned, the enemy team can see where he teleports. Haphazardly teleporting can easily result in a Vayne death, making Twisted Fate a very difficult champion to play. When utilized properly, Twisted Fate's kit, with the addition of a point-and-click stun, can heavily impact the game. The last mid lane champion we'll discuss is the overpowered Orianna. Honestly, we don't know why Riot hasn't nerfed her yet, as she's been on the top of our tier list for quite some time now. Liandry's nerfs were not enough to balance her. Orianna's kit is absolutely insane, with shields, slows, and speed buffs all built into her abilities. Her ultimate is easily one of the strongest skills in the game, providing an area of effect knockup that deals massive damage. Having the utility to throw her ball onto an ally or simply choose where to place it gives Orianna so many diverse options of play. With crazy defensive and offensive capabilities, she's able to adapt to any predicament she finds herself in. She is the strongest caster mage in high elo. Here is the mid lane tier list. Next up, we have the Dragon Lane picks. The first ADC up for discussion will be Draven, who is on our S tier picks. Draven is the most mechanically intensive ADC in the game, having to juggle his axes alongside his own positioning. At the same time, he's the most rewarding to play aggressively, since catching his axes increases the amount of gold he acquires from a takedown. This makes him a fantastic choice for players who know how to maximize his potential and snowball a game. As with many mechanically intensive champions, for those who don't know how to play him, it is incredibly easy to fall off. This is especially true for Draven, since dying means losing half of the bonus takedown gold from his passive. Paired up with the specific support champions that synergize with him, such as Janna, Draven becomes an unstoppable lane bully. Our second ADC is Ezreal. In our other tier list for this patch, he was in the B tier. In this list, however, he has made it up to the A tier picks. This is because Ezreal's damage is still very high, but definitely requires a more keen eye on angling his skills. With so many frontline champions being meta in patch 2.1b, Ezreal players need to be creative and smart with their skill positioning, sneaking in skill shots between the enemy. Thanks to his arcane shift, Ezreal has a unique advantage over most other ADC champions, an escape that can go through walls. The safety built into his kit makes him a very advantageous champion to play against engage-reliant team compositions. Maximizing his damage in team fights requires constant repositioning to find openings among the enemy team. But his overall kit makes him a great pick in the higher elo. The last ADC is Vayne. In both low and high elo, she has been severely underperforming. Vayne is a champion that requires intense focus on mechanics and positioning, but no matter how great people are at playing the champion, she is simply too weak to stand out. Sitting sadly as the only C tier for this list, Vayne is in dire need for some buffs. Her single target auto attack and lack of wave clear make her invalid in the meta. With no way to gain lane pressure, Vayne cannot properly scale into her late game power spikes. Here is the full ADC tier list. Last but not least, we have the support picks. For our first support champion, we have the overpowered Janna. Her disengage potential is phenomenal, capable of countering many of the meta champions in patch 2.1b. Janna's tornado knockups disrupts champions such as Wukong and Lee Sin. Doing so stops them from doing what they do best, engaging and therefore killing your teammates. By preventing enemy plays, Janna gives massive opportunities for outplay from her allies. Unlike the conventional champion, Janna doesn't carry by dealing damage, but rather prioritizes saving her allies. Therefore, a firm understanding of the flow of the game is necessary to properly utilize this pick. For those who love to play enchanter supports, like me, definitely try Janna out. She's hands down the strongest, most impactful enchanter support in the game. On the opposite end of the list, we have Blitzcrank at the D tier. His playstyle is great for abusing mistakes by grabbing out of position enemy champions. But in the higher elo, players tend to be a lot more careful in positioning, leaving little room to be grabbed. A Blitzcrank that can't land a grab is a useless Blitzcrank. Sounds like me. There are many other support picks that can guarantee landing their skills, without having to wait for the enemy to mess up. One such champion is Alistar. Alistar's Headbutt Pulverize combo is very easy to land once timing is mastered. This guarantees massive crowd control and serves as an excellent engage both in lane and in team fights. He scales very well into the mid-game as he becomes extremely tanky. By surviving extended skirmishes, he's able to continuously utilize his crowd control to help his team, making him an overpowered support pick. Here is the full support tier list.
Thanks for watching another ProGuides video. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And hey, you know what you can do? My Instagram is TPlays, and you can follow me over there and we can talk about video games.